Okay, so welcome to Satsang. So, as you know, if you have any questions, you are welcome to pose them by speaking your question or by writing your question in the chat box. So, one could say that this gathering is the gathering of the inner circle. When you are sitting around the fire, then you are bathed in the light, the warmth, the joy of being around truth, around the fire of truth, around the light of being. Your journey cannot be in vain. There is a destination to your journey. And the journey is about the destination, although also it is about the journey. It is about the journey because the contemplation of the self is a contemplation that takes place within the self. You are never leaving the self. You are the light of being. And so the contemplation is the contemplation conducted by your very self, your true self, meaning by the light of being itself. So the contemplation in itself is the journey. But it's not sufficient because in the contemplation, the veils of ignorance must dissolve. And the dissolution of the veils of ignorance has to take place right now. And they are dissolving right now as you sit around the fire, as you sit around the light. The veils dissolve. One could say they dissolve without your own doing, without your doing. They dissolve in spite of you. Not due to you, but in spite of you. Because the you is a conditioned structure of resistances and thoughts and beliefs. While the true self is none of that, is already awakened, already realized, already revealed. In your contemplation, you will find that you understand less and less. You can't figure it out. The mind comes to realize that it just can't get it. But because the love is too strong, it cannot quit. It's dragged by the heart. It's dragged along, in spite of it not getting it. So don't worry if you're not getting it, that's fine. It gets you. All you need to do is soak in the light of being. Your coming to satsang is sufficient. So if you have any questions,
Magdi?
hello Esther.
Hello. Thanks what you just said about the mind not getting it. I'm very aware that it doesn't get it. It can't get it. But at the same time, it continues to try and continues to even attempt to hijack the truth. And so I realize I have to be very careful not to judge the mind or resist its shenanigans. So perhaps you could talk about that a bit.
In a way, one could say that the mind is like a child. that says, no, I don't like that. No, I don't want to go there. I don't want this to happen. I remember when Chloe was born, and she was a little baby, and the nurse put her in my hands. I was very much at a loss. What do I do with this child? How to carry her, and what do I do now? But a week later, I was, burping her or whatever, maybe, or a month later, changing her, and it was like such a routine, But I remember initially it was disconcerting to have this. So in a way, the mind is like that. Initially, when it's making noise, it's disconcerting. But because you are a truth lover, in time, it doesn't move you that much. While initially, it was such a big deal, the resistance, the thinking, and the feeling. Eventually, we start to notice the thoughts, we start noticing the feelings. But from a place that is not taking it so dramatically, it works that way. It becomes less and less eventful, less and less important, less and less dramatic. But yes, the teaching, we soak the teaching. It soaks into us. It's sort of, you can't sit by the fire without getting warm or feeling the glow of the fire. It sort of soaks into you. So the teaching, the Dharma, has that magical capacity of transforming you inwardly, of releasing you inwardly from your old dramas or responses to events. The mind doesn't run the show. Like the clouds in the sky, they don't define the sky. So thoughts and feelings, they don't define what you are. You are undefined by the mind and how the mind appears. When we say the mind appears, we're referring to thoughts, referring to bodily sensations. Dolores, if you could mute your mic, please. Thanks. So there is a way of being with the thoughts and the emotions that is very different from engaging in them or engaging with them or engaging against them. Because the self-consciousness is completely at peace and at complete freedom, irrespective of whatever is arising. It's not experiencing what the mind is experiencing. It's relaxed, free, and at peace. There is a clarity that blooms within you about what you truly are. That what you are isn't affected by the mind. You know, the person, the subject. There is a widening clarity that you are not a personal self. And the mind always relates to the personal self. What seemingly gets affected is me, the person. And the way I get affected is that there are thoughts that arise that they're arguing with the thoughts that are arising. So it's a realm, the realm of thoughts. Supposedly a thought rejecting or arguing with another thought. But it's a thought has no is not knowing. A thought is not knowing. So it's our belief. We lend our belief to the thought. And so we make the thought knowing. So we give a certain power to the thought from beyond. So, or the thought is saying, this is a bad thing happening. And of course, behind that thought, there is a thought that's happening to me, the woman, me, the man, me, the person. So the clarity about what you are, about the true nature, that you are the aware presence, that you are the invisible reality of being, that reality that perceives this perception, but yet that is not perceived. That gets more and more established in your experience as the light of being, as the reality of being. And you don't want to diminish that to be something else, to be some kind of thought structure. So to return to the understanding, your living experience, that I am the awareness, I am this aware presence, and that this aware presence although it is not visible, although it has no height or weight or shape, although it is not phenomenal, although you cannot conceive of it, it is the reality of your experience. It is the reality, the one reality. It is real. How would it not be real? What would be this experience without awareness, consciousness? All experiences refer to their reality, which is awareness, consciousness. Every perception refers to your knowingness. Every sensation, every tiny vibration refers to your knowingness. And your knowingness refers to I awareness. So there is a sort of returning to what I am truly in your direct experience. So the question of what is the reality of my experience in this very moment, and not thinking about it or making a dissertation about it, but to dive completely, totally into it, die into it. What am I truly? What is the reality of my experience in this very moment? Allowing this question to reveal itself, to peel itself, to denude itself in front of you. It will appear as your very self, the formless self, the reality of being. And so when there is this, the sun is shining, then the mind, what would be the candlelight? The mind is even 1,000 candles. What are they in the face of one ray of sunlight? The sun shines vast, eternal, infinite. The sages speak of that. This is the ultimate teaching, to awaken to your true reality, your true self, your essential beingness. And that is available to you as you contemplate, as you sit in satsang, as you soak into the light of being that shines as your very self. We aggrandize the mind by arguing with it, by trying to fix it, by trying to improve it, by wanting to have a better mind, a better situation, a better experience. consciousness is completely free of experiences, isn't in the improvement business. It is in the delight business. Delight, the delighting, delightful, in delighting and contemplating and shining as the wisdom, as the light of being. That's really what consciousness is. This teaching is not for the many, it is for the few.
Magdi?
Yes, Zoe, can you just one moment, because Maria just wrote something I wanted to...
Oh, you bet.
Yes,
I'll wait.
thank you. So Maria, hello. Maria, you're right. Hi, Magdi. Could you talk about what being present really means? What does being present really mean? So being truly present is the absence of mind, the absence of the mind, the absence of the concept of presence. So being truly present is a sort of absence. It is sort of the dying of the death of the personal self and the shining light of awareness, of consciousness. So in being present, there is no one present. There is no one being present, and there is no one present. There is just the presence of presence that is present to itself. So presence is presence to presence, and it expresses itself as peace, as transparency, as wisdom, as clarity, as love, as wholeness, as oneness. It's inexpressible, really. You know yourself as presence, being presence, when you are in full knowingness of yourself. The full knowingness of yourself, of your very self, is the complete dissolution of the me impression, the complete dissolution of the separate self impression. So you have some caricatures of presence. One caricature of presence is like deep sleep, but it's a caricature of presence because in deep sleep you are not knowing yourself. But it is a caricature because in deep sleep there is the absence of the world, body, mind, and there is the experience of peace, but we are not knowingly the peace, unfortunately. Until we are knowingly the peace, then we are knowingly the deep sleep, we are knowingly the absence, meaning we are knowingly the presence. So I can only speak to you in metaphors about your question, because the true answer to your question has to be your own revelation, the death of your own separation, the ending of your own separation. Then you will know the answer to your question firsthand. So right now you are having a second-hand answer to your question. But within the second-hand answer to your question, there is the light of being. Maria, you write, so be present is like an oxymoron, because be and present is the same, and there is no one that is being present. Yes, in your question about what is true presence, there is no one being present. There is no one. There is the knowing, that presence knowing itself. There is a awareness knowing itself, beingness knowing itself. Being knowing. It's a beingness knowingness. But it's not being as somebody being. It's a borderless beingness knowingness. So another caricature that you can have of your question is when you are in love. When you are in love, you're experiencing the joy of being without a me. It's just the joy of being and the happiness of being without the me. Again, it's a caricature because still when you are in love, you still do not know yourself. But there are, say, approximations. So in terms of making your question more to just say some more about your question. Contemplate that you are never not present. You are never not presence. Now, Maria is sometimes present and sometimes absent. For example, between two thoughts, there is no Maria. Or in deep sleep, there is no Maria. Or even maybe right now, as you're hearing these words, there is no Maria. Because Maria arises as a thought, as a memory, or as an image. But oftentimes, there is no thought or image of Maria. But yet there is presence. So presence doesn't depend on Maria. Presence is when Maria, the image or the thought of Maria arises, presence is. And when the thought or image Maria isn't arising, presence still is. So presence is irrespective of the mind, in the absence of the mind, or in the presence of the mind. Presence is. Now, Maria, on the other hand, depends on presence, because the image Maria arises in presence and arises to presence, and is known by presence. And it's the substance even of that image is presence. So there is a sort of a dependency. The mind depends on presence, but presence doesn't depend on the mind. And when we say I, we're not referring to the image that's arising, we're referring to presence. Of course, I understand that we confuse the I. We believe that the I is the image that's arising. And so we're referring to I as the image, as the body image, as the mind image. But the true I is presence. The true I is awareness. So the practice of being present is not, is fallacious, is something off about it. Because you cannot practice being present. That would be a mind activity. That would be feeding the personal self. So the contemplation is the contemplation of the presence that is void of any body. Presence does not require Maria. Maria requires presence. But there is no Maria. Maria is just an image, a series of images. So Maria, you're right. Presence and awareness is here used interchangeably. Yes, presence refers to beingness. It refers to I am. The I am, the Sat. In Satchitananda, which is the expression of the teaching, of the non-dual teaching, the Sat is the I am, is presence. But Satchitananda, Sat doesn't stand alone. Sat stands with Chit. Now, Chit refers to awareness. So yes, Sat is presence, Chit is awareness. So Sat Chit, Ananda is the bliss of the self. So presence and awareness are one. The presence is knowing, and knowingness is present, you could say. They are not two. Yes. What matters is that you understand that you are this presence, and that this presence that you are is not inside the body, is not inside the brain, it's not inside your head. Presence has no borders. Presence doesn't depend on the body. It's not because the body is alive that presence is alive. You can cut the body in pieces, but you cannot cut presence. The body can die, but presence cannot die. We have never experienced non-presence because you need presence to experience non-presence. Non-presence doesn't exist. But the bodies, they exist and then they don't exist. We experience that all the time. In deep sleep, there's no body. So, well, but there is the body but I'm not aware of it. That's when you're going to thinking. Your direct experience is what you need to rely on. Because the only way to answer your question about presence is to go to your direct experience and not to thinking. It's your direct experience that is presence. That's where you will find the answer to your question, your own living answer to your own living question. I can only point to you in certain directions, but it has to be your living question and your living answer. So you have to look directly at your living experience, which is the only, which is real, while thought are a dime a dozen, Okay, Maria, you're welcome. So, Zoe, you had a question, Zoe?
Yes, but I was going to see if anybody else had one before. Okay, so I've got an echo. Last time when you were talking with Maru, you mentioned some things about veils, and I'm wondering if you can clarify, are veils and vasanas the same thing?
Yes.
Okay.
So, you could say that whatever arises in the mind as an objection, as a condition, as a resistance, as a seeking, as a complaint, are veils. Whether it is about members of people who work in your company, about your friends, about your parents, in your family, about your life, about politics, all these are veils. So yes, vasanas and veils, you can use these terms interchangeably. And there are some common veils that we all share, as the mass hysteria of the human experience, and that confuse themselves to be the mind. There are some common veils that we share, and then there are some very particular specific ones in each of our experiences.
And in Sahaja Samadhi, are all of those dissolved? Or you mentioned something that some of them are not important to awakening. They may just still be in the body and arise from time to time.
Right. You could say that as long as there is still a body-mind manifestation, there is the potential, the possibility of some unearthed or undisturbed veil to arise. So we leave that little room available, open for the possibility of something to stir up, to bubble up to the surface. The disturbance is not there, or is minimal, let's say 0.01% disturbance in the Sahaja Samadhi, as opposed to the disturbance being 75 to 85% in the normal mind. And it's as if these disturbance aspects in Sahaja Samadhi, they're gone. I don't know how else to say it. They're not there. It's as if it's inimaginable to be disturbed. If you can imagine.
Well, you know, Magdi, I was going to mention something that's sort of happening that gives me an inkling of that. You know, you said, okay, this life is not about this life. And the post you did today on Facebook with that beautiful poetry, you know, it's not about getting health or wealth or any of that. So I've had some triggers come up where the person, you know, feels like unjustly treated. But what's interesting is, yeah, it's like something inside is just turning away from that instead of engaging. So
Yes.
I can kind of get an inkling of what you're saying. It's like, no, that's not where I want to go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And I think our understanding that everything that is unfolding, there is a certain order to it. Not at the mind level, because the mind says, no, it shouldn't be this way. It should be that way. There should be justice in the world. There should be equity, and blah, blah. There should be justice for me. These people around me should act it this way and that way. There is sort of a blooming in our understanding where we start to understand at the deep level that all is well, just as it's meant to be. And as this understanding deepen in us, our reactivity it's sort of it diminishes, and at some point it's gone. It's just, it's like, why would you argue with God? You know, something like that. You know? I mean, it's you love God.
Yeah.
What would you argue with God? He gave me bad pay, bad salary, bad job, bad, you know. We do that.
You're right. Yeah. I was sorry, were you going to say something?
No, it's okay.
Okay. So I was looking back through some notes I took of what you said, and this one really hit me too. You are not in time, so how could you be born? It just was like, pow. There's, yeah, even quicker than looking, what am I truly? Well, you are not in time.
Yes.
There is no time.
Yes. In time is, we experience time as thought. So we perceive a thought, oh, that was yesterday, you know? And then so there's a thought that was yesterday, and the thought tomorrow. So memory and time, memory meaning thoughts that have in them a conversation that says this there was a before and there is an after. So, and our whole culture, you know, evolves, has been sort of divided around the time, you know, the sunrise and the sunset, and we have devised the year, and we've devised the month and the weeks and all of that based on the observation of the stars and the galaxies and the planets and all, you know. So there's been a study over hundreds of years of the astronomy, and so we've developed a time. In some cultures they have different years, and then the Judeo-Christian definitions and a calendar. So all that, of course, is mind, but it's okay. It has a function, you know. So we've Tuesday, I meet you. When I say I meet you next Tuesday, then we know, you know, oh, okay, that Tuesday. I mean, actually, actually we don't know what Tuesday is, but we keep track, we're keeping track. We say, okay, today's Monday. Today's Monday. So we say, oh, today's Monday. So we're keeping track in thought, memory. Yeah. And so so we experience time as thought. And then with the culture about we have to quickly go out to get the harvest. We have to make sure that we get there on time before somebody else gets ahead of us, blah, blah. So we started to experience the psychological feeling, meaning feelings, the feelings of time, the feelings of pressure, the feelings of, hurry, I need to get there, hurry, or I'm going to miss out. There's this thing about you're going to get there if you miss out. So the whole, the personal self and time and getting something for myself and not missing out. It's quite a mess. It's a big mess. It's and it's very painful. In most cases, it's very painful. That whole process is something I experienced. I experienced thought. You see, I experienced thought. I experience thoughts, therefore I experience the thought of time, and I experience a sensation of being rushed. So you say, what is the sensation of running late? So you could look at the sensation of running late, but so you suspend the running late, the descriptive, you suspend it for a moment, and you just go right into the sensation. And it's a totally different exploration when you are contemplating the sensation, suspending the way it's categorized or its description. You will find that you're entering into the wordless world, the world of no thought, which is consciousness. You will find that it's all consciousness. I remember suffering a lot because of time. I think it was maybe when I was in school and college and these things. There was quite a bit of. It depends from people to people. In my case, I remember that was a sort of a difficult thing for me at the time. Yeah.
Okay, I've got one more question. I was listening to a Rupert Spira yoga meditation, and I guess I'm just wanting clarity because he was talking about consciousness fragmenting into so that it could experience. But in reality, consciousness doesn't fragment, right? And I'm thinking, is he just saying that as, as a tool to cross over to the other side? And I don't know, maybe you can't answer that, but I'd appreciate any clarification.
You need to ask Rupert this question.
I will, because it really kind of stuck in my head. How could consciousness fragment? Okay.
I would take this opportunity to speak about something else that's related to working with teachers.
Okay.
And I am not talking about Rupert or about any other teacher. I'm just speaking generically, just to be really clear about that. So, when you are working with a teacher, you're closely, because many people they're like butterflies. They're going from teacher to teacher, and it's where they're at, and they are still at the surface of the journey. They haven't found yet the teacher to dive deep in. And in some cases, some students can find a teacher that they dive deep in, and at some point they hit sort of bottom, and then it would make sense then for them to be looking and exploring. Because when you reach that point in your contemplation where you feel that you've really gotten all you can from this teacher, you feel it within yourself that it's going much further, then it makes sense for you to remain open to deepen your teaching if you haven't arrived to your complete freedom. But in working with a teacher, when you are working with a teacher, it's not a good idea to be looking at other teachings, because every teacher has their own way of expressing themselves, and being with a teacher is being with their entire teaching. And there is a very particular way in which a teacher is teaching, and it is really the self, grace, that is speaking through them in a certain way. And it can be confusing to be going from one teacher to another teacher and to be sort of straddling teachers. You find a teacher that you resonate with, and you go as deep and as far as you can with the teacher. But coming back to your question, this question, I think is something that you could, and if you're interested, should address it to Rupert.
Okay. Thank you, Magdi.
Okay, sorry. You know, the image that's coming to mind is about milking the cow. You know, when they're milking the cow, the farmers, they get the teat of the cow, and they squeeze it in a certain way and get the milk out of the udder of the cow. I don't know, this image is coming to mind, like being with a teacher in a way is like that. You have to have a deep aspiration for the teaching. The teacher is just a temporary bonus, you know. Hello, Holly. Holly, you're right. You've talked before about giving more than you receive. Can you say more about that? generosity, giving, and openness is Anjin, I will come to your question in a minute, yes? So going back to Holly's question, you've talked before about giving more than you receive. So one of the tendencies of the personal self, one of the veils, you know, like Zoe was mentioning the veils before, is this concern about maintaining oneself via possessions, via one's possessions. We sort of define ourselves psychologically. We define consciousness, which is undefinable, and via these thoughts that I am I'm connected to what I own or what I have. So that's one of the veils we have is you say it arises as greed, as pettiness, as attachment, as hoarding, which is the complete opposite of how consciousness is. Consciousness is complete openness. So consciousness is like a flow of grace. It's a flow of grace. And in living according to consciousness in your journey, you have to also live that. You live as consciousness. And there are many aspects of consciousness that you live. One of the aspects is that of giving, of generosity, of expressing your gratitude, of expressing your appreciation, of being kind when you notice somebody is in need and it arises from you and it's possible for you to help, and to be available beyond the calculating mind, not to be constantly calculating about what will I get, what's in it for me, not to be constantly measuring your own goods, you know, and holding on. There is a so you consider like the sunlight is constantly shining. You can say like it's sort of giving light and giving heat, yes, and it's giving clarity, and the entire world appears via the giving of the light, of the sunlight, yes. So in a way, you can consider consciousness similarly, that consciousness is this giving, this constant giving. Another way of looking at it is that everything is given to you. You are given the body to perceive and to experience the world and the mind. You're given the breath, you're given gravity, you're given nature with its beauty, with all the nourishment that comes from the earth. All of that is given to you without you creating it. You don't need to do any effort to breathe. It's being given to you. The blood flow is given to you. Perception, sensation is given to you. The human tribe is given to you. So all of that is giving from God. So you as consciousness, when you realize yourself, what you truly are, you become a channel of giving. And so you have to sort of facilitate that channel, because we have a tendency to resist that. We have a tendency to maintain ourselves as a me, with my things, with my house, with my car, with my money, with my clothes, with my friends, with my job, etc. It's a very powerful part of our identity, is our attachment to things. And consciousness, on the other hand, is a constant flow, it's a constant giving, it's constant openness. And so the generosity isn't there a saying, close to godliness, something, generosity is close to godliness or something like that. Anyways, generosity is very important in living as consciousness. You live with generosity, with open to the giving and not to the receiving. Now, keep in mind that you're constantly receiving. There is this belief that things come to me because of me, but that's not so. Things come to you via grace. There is only one giver, which is God, which is consciousness. It's all coming to you. It all comes to you. You don't earn it. You don't have to earn God's love. You don't have to earn your living. Living is given to you by God. You don't earn it. You have to abandon. This is a veil. That's one of the vasanas, that I earn my living. And it's a big spin. There's a lot of karma around that, a lot of ignorance around having to work hard, having to earn my living, having to get ahead and all of that. It's really a big mess. It's a big mess, this vasana. And consciousness isn't like that. Consciousness is just constant giving. So you don't need to earn your living. Living is given to you. It is given to you. You just need to understand that really deeply. It comes to you from God's love. But when you are in love with earning a living, then God says, okay, I mean, let me see how I can help you. And God will come and help you. When you try to earn your living, God will try to help you. God will make sure that you will fail at it, that you will experience a lot of misery, because God is trying to tell you, wait a minute, that's not the path. The path is not for you to go and be God. I am here already. I am here already. So if you want to go and earn your living and battle, then what God will do, He will send other people that work harder than you, they're smarter than you, they're younger than you, they're more intelligent than you, they're more capable from you, and they get the raises and you want. Then you will experience a lot of misery because you are venerating your personal self. You're not honoring God. Okay, Holly, yes. Let me see. Anjin, okay. It's, so Anjin, I'm reading what you write. You say, hi, Magdi. What if your interests lie in the area of spiritual direction or network building? This was a follow-up question to the question of working with a single teacher, assuming this is your way to give, not an egoic thing. Okay, let me look at the part of your question, Anjin. What if your interests lie in the area of spiritual direction or network building? This was a follow-up to the question of working with a single teacher. What if your interests lie in the area of spiritual direction or network building? Well, the spiritual direction, as far as I understand it, is awakening to the self, being established as the self, awakening to truth. That is the spiritual direction, awakening to God consciousness. Network building, I don't know what that is, network building. But if your interest is in spiritual direction, meaning awakening to truth, at some point or the other, you will find a teacher, you will find a guide. If grace wills it, if your love for truth is sincere, then you will find the guides and the friends that will guide you, and ultimately you will find your teacher. And your teacher, you may have already met previous teachers, but your Sadguru will be your final teacher, and you will find the revelation of your true nature. I don't know how to answer about network building. If you're interested in network building in the spiritual, that would be more of a social thing, which is okay. I mean, if you like to belong to a certain network, I just don't see how it connects to the spiritual contemplation. I'm sorry, that's as far as I can say about it. I don't. And then you say, Anjin, assuming this is your way to give, not an egoic thing. Yes, right. That's a good point, Anjin, about giving. I was follow up to Holly's question that we don't give for personal recognition or for personal interest. We give because God is giving through us, you know. Okay, so Anjin, you're clarifying here. You're saying by spiritual direction, I mean helping people find a teacher. So you say by spiritual direction, I mean helping people find a teacher. No. It is, you cannot help people find a teacher. God takes care of that. It's not your business to help people find a teacher. That's a little arrogant. You may, via your love for your teacher, for example, affect others who, through your love, they will find your teacher to be also their teacher, or they may come to sit by your teacher because they can sense your love and your deep relationship with your teacher. They will get an inspiration from you, and they may find themselves attracted to your teacher, especially if they sense the love and they sense the peace and they sense the humility and they sense the love, which is quite different, I would say, than helping people find a teacher. All that is in God's hands. You say by network, linking people together to the Mahasangha. The Sangha is only the true Sangha is not a social Sangha, it's a Sangha that is around the love for truth and the love for the teacher. The Sangha is a natural an unfolding evolution of friends around the teaching and around the teacher, and they connect with each other, and they're sharing the teaching unknowingly by simply being together and interacting together. That's a natural phenomena that happens around the teacher, like naturally around a beautiful flower, people come around to look at the flower, or the bees come around the flower to get the nectar and the pollen from the flower. All of that takes place in the absence of the personal self. That is all via grace. It is all grace's doing. Any questions? Let me see, Anjin, I just saw you wrote something else. Okay, thanks. Yes. Okay, Anjin. Okay, so if there are no other questions, it's very lovely to be with you as usual. And we'll see you again soon. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody. Oh, Shiva. Hello, Shiva. I was just saying goodbye to everybody.
Yes, I was following on YouTube because earlier it was full, but
okay.
it's lovely to just say hello.
Okay, beautiful. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.